I moved to Washington State for college, a place known for its towering trees, endless rain, and legends that hide deep in its forests. For my first 2 semesters, I kept to myself. Didn't party much, didn't join any groups. But by spring, I decided to push myself a little and joined a fraternity. I won't say which one, but they were infamous for one thing: their initiation rituals. I'm not usually into that kind of thing, but I'd heard rumors about their wild hazing week, and it intrigued me more than I'd like to admit. What I didn't expect, however, was the final test, the one they called the Night in the Murder Woods. Everyone in the area has heard of this place. A remote patch of thick forest just outside the city, known for whispers of hauntings, strange sightings, and a handful of real-life tragedies involving missing hikers and even a few bodies that had been found decades ago. The kind of place that ends up with its own subreddit and half-baked documentary. Of course, I figured the stories were just local lore, exaggerated for drama and scare factor. I thought the fraternity was just using it to freak us out. I couldn't have been more wrong. There were 7 of us pledges that year. They loaded us into vans, drove us out to the edge of the so-called murder woods, handed each of us a backpack with a tarp, a sleeping bag, and a flashlight, and told us to follow a trail into the forest. After about an hour of hiking, we'd supposedly reach a designated campsite where we'd spend the night alone. That was the only real rule: spend the night in the woods. No phones, no fire, no leaving early. As we started walking, I stayed with the group, chatting quietly, nervously joking about what might be waiting for us. But 45 minutes in, a thought hit me: they wanted us all at the same site so they could sneak in later and mess with us. Scare us. Pull some classic college prank. I wasn't going to be that easy of a target. So without saying anything, I slipped off the trail and veered deeper into the forest, moving carefully but confidently. I figured if I camped far enough away, they wouldn't be able to find me. No pranks, no hazing. I'd passed the challenge on my own terms. For the next 15 minutes, I picked my way through thick brush and trees until I found a small clearing nestled between towering evergreens. It was quiet, peaceful. The late spring breeze rustled through the branches, and the woods around me chirped and buzzed with life: crickets, distant owls, and the occasional rustle in the underbrush. I set up my tarp and sleeping bag, took a short video clip for proof, just in case, and laid down, flipping off my flashlight with a sense of smug satisfaction. Then the silence hit. Not a slow fade. Not a gentle hush. 1 second the forest was alive, and the next, it was dead. Completely, unnaturally silent. No crickets. No wind. Nothing. It was so sudden I thought I'd lost my hearing. I rubbed my fingers together next to my ear just to check. I could hear that faint sound. But nothing else. And then I felt it. A warm breath on the back of my neck. Hot. Damp. Close. I froze. I hadn't heard a single step, no movement, just that breath, slow and deliberate, like someone standing inches behind me, exhaling with purpose. I scrambled for my flashlight and swung it in a wide arc around me. Nothing, just trees and empty grass. And the second the light came on, the forest sounds returned all at once, as if someone had flipped the volume back on. Crickets chirped. Branches swayed. Everything was normal again. I wanted to pack up and run right then, but something in me said no. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. I told myself I was being paranoid. That my mind was playing tricks. That I couldn't let ghost stories mess with me. So I stayed. I laid back down, flashlight still in my hand. I left it off but kept my thumb on the switch. I waited for the silence to return, but it didn't. The natural sound stayed. I slowly relaxed. My heartbeat settled. And eventually, I drifted off. I don't know how long I was asleep. Maybe an hour. Maybe just minutes. But I woke up to something different. Breathing. Not mine. Heavy, slow, rhythmic inhaling. Not animal-like. Human. Deep. And high above me. I didn't move. Just opened my eyes and stared into the darkness. Then I heard mumbling. Faint words I couldn't understand. Like someone whispering from a distance, only broken up by those long breaths. It was coming from directly in front of me, somewhere among the trees. I reached slowly for my phone, hands shaking. I didn't dare sit up. I opened the camera app and hit the flash. The image it captured burned into my memory. There, standing about 30 feet away, was a figure. A woman. She wore a long, pale dress, torn and dirty. Her black hair hung straight down, covering most of her face. And her skin, it looked wrong. Decayed in places. Like her face had been eaten away, revealing patches of raw flesh beneath. But the worst part? She was staring directly at me. Through her hair. Through the trees. At me. I didn't wait. I launched myself out of the sleeping bag, grabbed the flashlight, and ran. Barefoot. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Every instinct told me not to. The only sound I could hear was the thud of my feet hitting the dirt and my own gasping breath. No footsteps behind me, no whispers, but that didn't comfort me. Only when I saw the glow of distant streetlights and my phone finally buzzed with a signal did I stop running. I made it to the roadside and sat there until the fraternity came to pick us up the next morning. When I got back, I confronted the brothers, demanded to know if it was some kind of elaborate prank. But they all swore up and down that they hadn't even known where I'd gone. They admitted to scaring the other initiates, using air horns, blanks, and fake bear sounds, but no one had followed me. No one could have known where I was. And that picture. It was still on my phone. I stared at it for days. And no matter how many times I tried to explain it away, nothing made sense. I don't go near the woods anymore. Especially not alone. Not in Washington. Something lives out there. Something that doesn't want to be found, but always seems to find you. If you've ever heard breathing behind you in the woods, even when you know you're alone, you're not crazy. And you're not alone. I've worked with forest search and rescue for nearly a decade now, operating primarily in remote, heavily wooded regions of the United States. The kind of terrain where GPS barely works, radio contact fades fast, and the trees feel like they're watching you. Over the years, I've helped recover dozens of missing persons, hikers, campers, hunters, and the occasional curious wanderer who just veered too far off a trail. Most of the time, the situation is predictable. People get turned around. They fall. They panic and move in the wrong direction. Sometimes we find them a few hours later, cold but alive. Other times, we find what's left. But there are a few cases that don't make sense. The kind that stick with you. The kind you replay in your head on quiet nights. The ones that, frankly, scare the hell out of me. One of the earliest cases that shook me involved a young boy and his sister who had gone missing while picking wild berries with their parents. According to the parents, they lost sight of the kids for maybe 30 seconds. A blink. That's all it took. The kids had vanished. We mobilized fast. Within an hour we had a team sweeping the woods. We found the little girl about 2 miles from where she was last seen, sitting quietly beneath a tree, unharmed but distant. When we asked her where her brother was, she said, in a strangely calm voice, the bear man took him. Naturally, we assumed she meant an abductor, maybe someone in a costume. But the more she described him, the less human he sounded. She said he was like a bear, but not a bear. He had hair all over his body, stood on 2 legs, and had a broken face. Her words, not mine. She said he gave her berries to keep her quiet, and told her he wanted to play with her brother for a while. We searched that forest for nearly a month. Dogs, helicopters, night operations. Not a single clue turned up, not a footprint, not a shred of clothing, not a sound. It was like the kid had been erased from reality. Another case that haunts me is that of a teenage girl who was hiking with her mom and grandfather. They said she climbed a tree to get a better view of the valley and just never came back down. Her mom was standing at the base of the tree the entire time. No sign of her jumping down, no noise, no cry for help. Nothing. The tree wasn't even that tall, maybe 20 feet. We climbed it, examined every branch, combed the surrounding area for days. Dogs didn't pick up a scent. There was simply no logical explanation for where she went. I try not to think about it too much. Over time, I've learned to trust the search dogs. They're sharp. But now and then, they lead you in impossible directions. Literally. A few times, I've followed a K9 straight toward a sheer cliff wall. Not a trail, not a scramble, an actual vertical wall of rock with no handholds or ledges. The dogs will sniff, circle, and bark at the base like the scent continues up the wall. What's even stranger is that in more than one of those cases, we later find the missing person miles away, on the other side of the cliff. In terrain they could not possibly have crossed in the time they were missing. I can't explain it, and I stopped trying to long ago. One of the hardest days of my career was recovering the body of a little girl who'd fallen down a steep ravine. She'd been hiking with her dad and slipped, landing on a dead tree whose branch pierced straight through her chest. It was instant. But it's not the scene itself that broke me, it was her mother. When we brought the body up and loaded the bag into the ambulance, her mom let out a scream I can still hear in my nightmares. A raw, animal cry, like something inside her soul had torn open. I later heard she took her own life a few weeks later. That still guts me. You never forget sounds like that. One time we were searching for a climber who hadn't returned from a solo trip. There had been reports of a bear sighting nearby, so I was paired with another officer for safety. After scaling a tricky ridge, we found the guy trapped in a crevasse with a shattered leg. He'd been there nearly 2 days, and his leg was turning septic. We called in a chopper and got him airlifted out. Before they took off, the EMT pulled me aside and said the guy had been completely hysterical, kept rambling about a man he saw at the summit. This man, he said, wasn't wearing any climbing gear, just a parka and snow pants. He seemed to be waiting. When the climber approached, the man turned to face him, and had no face. Not a disfigurement. Not an injury. Just a blank space. Skin where features should be. The climber said he panicked and fled down the mountain, lost his footing, and fell. And all night, as he lay broken in the rocks, he could hear this faceless man crawling down after him, letting out muffled, gurgling screams. I didn't sleep for days after hearing that. Late one evening, we were following up on a missing hiker report. A young woman had gotten separated from her group. Dogs picked up her trail, and we found her about 10 miles deep, curled under a rotting log, barefoot and in shock. She wasn't injured, just distant and jittery. As we walked her back toward base, she kept glancing behind us, asking why the tall man with the black eyes was following us. We saw nothing, of course. I assumed she was hallucinating. Shock does weird things to the brain. But she grew more distressed the closer we got to safety, kept whispering that he was getting mad, that he didn't like being ignored. Eventually, she stopped walking and screamed into the woods, "I'm not going with you. Leave me alone. I won't let you take them." We calmed her, kept her moving. But then, we heard it. A noise. Not an animal. Not human. A deep, rhythmic clicking or coughing sound that echoed around us, like giant insects choking on gravel. She suddenly turned to me, eyes wide, and said something I will never forget. "He says to tell you to hurry up. He hates the scar on your neck." I have a scar, yes. It's tiny, hidden under my collar. There's no way she could have seen it. That's when I felt a puff of cold air on the back of my neck, like someone breathing inches from my ear. That same coughing sound followed it. We practically ran the rest of the way to base. This last one. I probably shouldn't be telling you this. It's not something we talk about, not even among ourselves. But I figure, if you've made it this far, you deserve to know. Deep in the backcountry, 30, 40 miles in, we sometimes come across something out of place. A staircase. Standing alone in the woods. I'm not talking about ruins or remnants of old cabins. These stairs are clean, intact, often carpeted or modern looking. Like someone plucked a staircase from a suburban home and dropped it in the middle of nowhere. The first time I saw one, I asked my partner what the hell it was doing there. He just shook his head and said, "Don't touch it. Don't go near it. Just leave it alone." Everyone says the same thing. No one will explain why. And they're everywhere. Not every mission, but enough that you stop asking questions. You just look away and keep moving. I have more stories. Dozens, honestly. If people want to hear them, maybe I'll share a few more soon. But for now, if you've ever seen the stairs, or heard the coughing, or met the man with no face, don't go back out there. Some things in those woods aren't meant to be found. Don't forget to subscribe for more real horror stories from the edge of the wilderness. So, I logged back on tonight and was absolutely blown away by the response to my earlier posts. I didn't expect that kind of attention, and I appreciate all the feedback, especially from those who shared their own experiences or just wanted to know more. Before I dive into more stories, I want to clear up a few things that came up in the comments. First off, a lot of people mentioned the similarities between what I've shared and the work of David Paulides. Let me say this outright, I'm not trying to rip the guy off. I have immense respect for what he's done. In fact, he's one of the reasons I started writing any of this down. I've seen a few things in my time with SAR that line up eerily well with what he talks about, particularly the disappearances. A lot of those cases really do defy logic. People vanish into thin air, only to be found later in places they couldn't have possibly gotten to alone, or they're never found at all. I haven't been on as many of those calls as some of our veteran team members, but I've got a handful of stories. And one that a close friend told me that still gives me chills. I'll get to those shortly. Yep, the stairs are real. People were asking about them like I was making it up. I wish I was. They come in all shapes and sizes, old, ruined stone sets half buried in moss, perfectly intact carpeted ones, metal spirals that look like they came out of a lighthouse. Some are barely tall enough to trip on, others climb a good 20 feet into the air. They're not infinite. They don't go anywhere. They just are. Imagine walking through dense, untouched forest and stumbling across a staircase like someone copy-pasted it from a suburban house. It messes with your head. I've seen a dozen different sets at this point, and while I haven't climbed them, and never will, they're impossible to forget once you see one. I don't have pictures. I tried to snap one during training once, but it just didn't seem like a good idea. Maybe I'll try again in the future, but not if it risks my job. Some of you were confused about the story I shared earlier, where a climber encountered a man with no face. Just to clarify, when he reached the peak, he saw another man already up there, dressed in a parka and ski pants. That was the man with no face. The wording was clunky, that's on me. At least half of our calls are related to missing people. The other half are injuries, falls, burns, usually from drunk kids messing around with fires, animal attacks, things like that. We've got some damn good trackers on our team, and most of the time, we find something, a broken branch, a piece of clothing, a trail of prints. That's what makes the ones where we find nothing so damn frustrating. Here's one that stuck with us for years. An older man went hiking alone, something we usually don't recommend, especially since he had a medical history of seizures. His wife called it in when he didn't return home. We ran a standard search op. It didn't take long before one of our veteran trackers spotted signs that he'd veered off the main trail. We spread out in a fan formation and followed the signs deeper into the woods. Then we got a radio call. One of our guys wanted us all to regroup. Usually, that means the subject has been found and needs assistance. We met him standing beneath a tall tree, looking stunned. I asked what he'd found, and he just pointed upward. Hanging from a branch, 30 feet off the ground, was the missing man's walking stick. It was looped perfectly around the branch by the strap. No other sign of the guy. No blood, no clothing, no tracks beyond that point. Our dogs couldn't pick up his scent past that tree. We never found him. His wife called us daily for months. Her voice broke a little more every time.